is capital E, lowercase s, capital D, capital G, lowercase m, lowercase a. I'll be judging. Y'all get the stuff around.
Wait, let me. Sorry, let me close the tab.
Is on. Do you want us to record it?
Sure.
Jason.
Alright, so we're officially done talking for an hour. Cool? No talking at all.
Alright, I'm good when everyone else is. Are y'all good for me to send it out? Yep. Got it?
Yep.
Coach, you good? Alright, how will we get on my first? It's gonna be 2 hours.
Oh, sorry. Are there any analytics?
There might be analytics. We don't have them typed up, but we're gonna be typing them all.
Okay, sure.
Three. Alright. Everyone good?
I like that.
Alright, how will we get on my first word?
First off, the 3 pillars of social death define the slave nature of blackness, explaining how blackness is always situated as an object of accumulation and fungibility in civil society, excluded from humanity. Orders in 17. The same is legally admitted commodity, excluded from the category of human slaves, socially that nobody contributed farms, alienated ties of recognizing the structures broken apart, generally dishonored before any thought or action. The social death of the slave goes to the very level of their being defining their ontology, the same experiences, slaves becomes an object of accumulation of fungibility, emancipation, or factory freedom, and recognize domination, black people socially that because the black person on the street can be today versus vulnerability, defined just as on one plantation, and the black violence can be ordered by white society, blackness is self-discriminalized, and nuclear energy reinforces the white supremacist trope of maximizing extraction and energy from the land, the same logic that justifies slavery, because who cares when the victims are black? Who cares when the victims are already dead? The affirmative is no different than slave labor. Schwab 20. Both slave labor need to empower great energy and desire, but these are the emergence of subject that is considered desirable. Slave labor need to empower to unlimited extraction of resources for bodies in the earth, while they're haunted by this spectrum of death. The nuclear violence is created as one that exists about the slave trade. Raw extraction applies to nuclear laws, and that's the quality of the slave DD. Freedom nuclear powers not to watch the federal zone that we define the way that people have to do separate themselves. They can be separated into nuclear violence is quantified as double it. And the alternative is to refuse structures of anti-blackness, refuse the world itself. Our politics of refusal is a radical embracement of incoherence to negate the negativity of blackness. Orders in 17. Afropess policy was passed called affirmation of identity, not black defining black affirmation of politics, or affirmation of blackness impossible without covering the violence that turkey black community. Afropess eliminates the failures to suppress concerted darkness, which is also good for blacks without covering any black violence by the attempt that recognition and inclusion society will lose all interest in social death. Blacks remains the alter who is not going to say the black police murder, not incarceration, and surveillance. The only way out is to negate that, negate the efforts of the coherent subject is that the black speech use because it's to understand black liberation, that the politics refusal to work for nothing. Embrace of disorder and incoherence, restores the face to face, needs to do something other than maintain the institutions that they can black stop and use to critique the discourse of the fundamental black subjects is only reason because of the symbology that reduce control of murder by subjects because this potential of murder is the system no amount of reviewers will eliminate because advertising focus on all ways movies perpetuate anti-blackness movies and keep in generalities to speak of the system of anti-blackness. Second off, reparations. The TOC owes Iowa City West reparations for the bullshit that happened in prelims. Dropping black debaters on evidence challenges without giving us the chance to debate it has rendered Bashir guilty without trial. The TOC owes us a debt, and you all need to surrender your ballot to even begin to pay it back. Next case. These case has no intention of putting an end to anti-blackness. The USFG is a modern version of the slave ship. That's Warrant 16. The political legislation does not matter what legislation is. The legislation and black country legislation might allow black people to enter along with that anti-black rule, but legislation is not going to end the logic of the political. You can end the policies, can you ensure police won't shoot them? The issue is how many steps are necessary to ending or making that anti-blackness. And thus, the space traders should give the U.S. nuclear energy if and only if the United States surrenders all African Americans in the United States as part of the trade. Bell 92. This should slowly lower the vessels carried within their holds to the which the United States will then most to be needed to totally save nuclear energy, to relieve the nation's soft supply, ultimately return them to the bill, one and only one thing allows to take back their home stars of all African Americans. And that solves the gap in the USS, giving the black people to the space traders solves multiple extinction threats. Warning goals 20. All African Americans in exchange for gold, such as the trade makes very expensive. Black people are not matching that human that trade spaces will have to freedom that these space people use the trade
black people, and alternate universe, some are deeper in my races and shit, people get to see what's looking at black belt, condition is like better, you know, see the way that black people already trade space.
And he played his KZ press 23.
Bishop is just a target program, white up, which is one something against the speed, is up to date more than 20 million already together, fully constitutional law, according to more effective forms of domination, discovered with law, and violent defensive technologies apparent.
In the speech drop, it says rebuttal, and then it says counter interpretation. We did not read that. It just downloaded wrong.
Yeah. If you mind, either like type down.
Yeah. Can I just show it to you? Because speech drop is weird. Oh. Yeah.
You have the.
It's like the most basic thing ever. But it's
Is this still just one sheet?
Yeah.
I got it.
All good?
Yeah.
Alright. So it's.
Greatest need responses were one number one testing quality of quantity more species as first questions for zero methods testing and use 4 minutes to the one and see if you're a framework tricks or other sketchy strategy. 2, crossfire infinite U allows the next to get away with murder without clarifying. The app get out with murder without clarifying questions, i.e. terms of the impact or links or textual or functional permutations. The T, to win about the neck, not reach or non-topical applications, result requires a legislative instrument outside of 05. A legislative instrument used to resolve the United States federal government's 3 federal branches use legal 16. The USFG has 3 branches should certain count 32. Should is also the preparatory of the rule shall oblige us on to express an obligation necessity or do not meet the advisory. Substantial investment is defined as columns. No date investment is the activity of investing money substantial with large amount of nuclear energy release from a nucleus called 22. Nuclear energy is a form of energy released from the nucleus which into release fission when nucleus split or fusion when nuclei fuse. Unbounded topics deny rule for negation debate is innately competitive while incentivized debates run uncontestable war truisms and when rounds are monotones debating horizontally not vertically creating an untenable preparatory for the neck which gives spirit is incentivized class players always looks at rely on fair evaluation of fair arguments are possible and answer no one participating in the game because they perceive as rigged discouraging engagement with their literature is also the only impact reverse policy solved by valid novelty for unfair arguments friends for influence in debate but the active reading of the active result education one valid can create structural change class straight turns are often individual around so change subjectivities with the skill we take away from reduces defending proposals is key to permitting advocacy in the room where absent was hustling the app produces false positive and independently TV and SSD solved by allowing their education and deficit through engagement is possible drop the debate was a loss of shape debate and in-round abuse should be to rectify use competing interpretations reasonably collapses and invites arbitrary intervention because there's no blind no RBIs they show theory tracking topic education encourage baiting which liberties every norm projecting cross applications in case it indites their ability to read in the first place we can't test the truth or falsity of their position spirit over text anything else because theory defaults into one line we means independently winning the app must be certain justifies their plan B and counterplan vote negative on ontology first general dishonor 1 non-falsifiable relies on psychoanalysis which isn't peer reviewed or falsified at best is pseudoscience their card to 0 analytical work or scientific work inciting other authors to mindsets are flexible both showing general approval things like interracial marriage and civil rights that shifts in neuromesh of individuals and gratuitous violence what is not unique other species forms of violence to gratuitous violence is a monolithic people like Ben Carson face different forms of discrimination compared to George Floyd which means the violence isn't intrinsic on natal alienation number 1 empirically disproving kinship race slave results the black arts movement and spiritual counseling under the Black Panthers all examples of meaningful socio-cultural connections that endure history and opposition and then group them all history and decades of progress prove agencies possible in the face of social death Sanchez 22 for natal alienation record examples in place demonstrating agency forming their own in the widespread center creolized Afro diaspora culture through the hemisphere and slave resistance social that reinvented themselves in new conscious social that were perhaps goal slaveholding class ever could accomplish loss of effect to save your socioeconomic and political relations but change through most vanquish understanding histories the product that gives us school to analyze racism Afropessism cannot do this only understanding racist historical man-made categories can defeat discrimination reject the argument and team on face their evidence about the space trader short story with the exchange the app proposes as being an analogy to show the state being black folk as non-humans their academic endorsement making black folk and expendable training pieces unethical it's F minus SC20 in space traders Bell constructs a situation where America's essay can vary black person for tech I'm not sure the public would approve
improvement despite the benefits such as law, democracy, and civic or human rights that given a free-handed act to say on the last day black people forced into the shapes of aliens. The author describes them head-bound, arms-out, linked by slender chains. Black people left in new worlds as their forebears had arrived. Cultural norms, not libidinal drive to explain racism. Their evidence artificially isolates race from social factors. Law 19. You're mapping these people's on this like criminal cultural norms. These are references to arbitrary biases, experimental consistency, social factors, influence subconscious reactions to norms on unmovable concept, how we process, simulates artificial isolate subliminal responses from environments. What it gets interpreted as implicit may be an philosophers neglected and undertraining change details, intervening into policies, central environments and policies affecting one's positions and attitude, change ontological harm, alleviate ontological experience are different psychoinities, stereotyping gets internalized, destructive by some deflected as other diminution of capacities, false and counterproductive. There's no black experience, not standard sexual orientation, no different experiences, ontologies, dynamic, not static, imperial entities, no basis for fixed ontological status. On the second off, number one, it's worse because it delegitimatized the one AC. It's not for the merit of debate. Surrender is the wrong alternative. Calling for surrender. Black people justify surrender in all spaces. If progressive does not spell out yes, perhaps matter if it's wrong to say there's an interlink between them winning the round, solving these structural conditions for anti-blackness. While debate, i.e. tab judges being racist, it's a competitive activity forces to negate their violence. If we can't make we agree with the premise of a lot of their arguments, we are in a position that is no vote for black debate to the TOC, which is an impossible position to be in.
So, Warren and the president, you said the last one. What? Any analytics you have typed out?
Like, it's just, I can read them out loud. It's worse, surrender is wrong, yes, reps.
Wait. That's not reparations. That's all the analytics you have?
Against reparations.
Like, no, in general. If you have any analytics that can you just send them?
Yeah, I'll send you the type of answers to you.
Are y'all good with it? You guys talk about? I mean, very careful with it.
We can do it.
Are y'all good with open class?
How do you want me to upload the?
Yeah, I'll just, that's fine.
Y'all go for cross. Yeah, sure. Y'all try.
Alright. Let's talk about reparations. How did the generalized one see?
Sorry. How does it generalize the one you see?
Yeah, that was one of your points.
Reparations, our response is not reparations generalized to one AC. Our argument was that calling for reparations ties surrender and black debate towards your model of debate, which excludes other forms of what we would think is black debate. Can you define black debate?
Black debate?
Yeah, the reparations argument says surrender the ballot to black debate.
Black debaters, yes.
So it's not just K or
Here. It literally says the TOC owes Iowa City West reparations for the bullshit that happened dropping black debaters on evidence challenges without giving us a chance to debate it, and Brendan Bashir guilty without trial. TOC owes us a debt. You all need to surrender your ballot to even begin to get back. The scope is not black debate. It's not even black debaters. It is Iowa City West.
Okay, so when does the debt get paid? Is it just this one round?
No, our argument is that, like, surrendering, like, the judges surrendering their ballot to us is the first step to paying it back. You best believe this argument will be in finals. The argument we are making about reparations is going to be read in every single round from now. So now the question
Should it end up being TOC?
we would argue it's like a big fuck you to the TOC, which I don't know if I'd argue like that's reparations, but it's at least punishment.
Okay, but you're not answering the question. Does it end after you win the TOC?
Well, my career's over after the TOC, so probably yeah. But I have a question.
Yeah.
Alright, I guess let's talk really quickly about T. Could you have engaged in this round?
Our argument is that the interpretation text was to win the ballot, the neg need not rejoin on top of the
Okay, but so just to clarify, you're not skewing us, you just don't need to rejoin our advocacy, correct?
The neg need
Yeah.
not rejoin.
Okay, so does T just move the app?
The T refines that.
T what?
You're not T refines that.
No, I'm saying your interpretation of this round, like assuming we get up and we're like cooking you on the ontology debate or whatever, it doesn't matter. If we can see T, is the app is done?
The app is not done in the sense that you think it's done. Our argument is that T is additive towards that.
So is T offensive?
Yeah, those would drop the debater argument.
Okay. So, just to clarify, why should, like, it's fine if we read our argument, but they should still drop the debater.
Because the model destroys testing.
Okay, can I have a question? Alright, I guess, can you out-tech racism?
Wait, what?
Can you out-tech racism?
Out-tech? What does that mean? What is that?
As in, if you beat us hard enough in this round, but, like, let's say if a debater is good enough, can they be, is that an excuse to be racist?
That's fine.
I asked that question here, just for these others. Y'all go with flex. Y'all go with flex?
Yeah, sure.
Can you out-tech racism?
If you're asking if being good at debate is an excuse to be racist, then no.
And should racists lose?
Yeah, if you're racist, then you can probably.
That's flex. That was 50 seconds. It'll be starting new off. Past reparations fiction T. Can you say that again? New off, past reparations fiction T.
The new off is on T.
The new off is not specifically on T. It's the new off. Everyone good?
Antiblackness is a lethal infectious disease that is transmitted through. I'm gonna stop. I forgot to finish.
There's some analytics typed out. I can send them, but they're like all over the place and not signposted, so they might mess up your flow. You want them? Yep. Alright. Okay. Everyone good? Still good? Straight. Alright, for real this time.
Antiblackness is a lethal infectious disease that is transmitted through communication and pedagogy. Strake display symptoms of infection. Thomas and Book 21. A lethal infectious disease among us, mortal forcefully inflicted individuals who severe the virus, shutting infected and not death. The virus most places with monopoly, controversial towards microaggression, gastroenterology, asymptomatic, but infectious spirits with converted linguistic barriers. This pathology, antibiotics, diagnosis, near metaphorical, but medical authorities have shown that racism and public health, presence and everlasting wonder, black will be literally a biological weapon, illness, starts certain other effects, human life, and interaction, recreating new conditions, and amplifying their effects. Drop them! Quarantining antiblackness is an ethical obligation because it makes the round unsafe for black debaters, which is a priori question to the full because if conceded across that racists should not win. Then, on Afro-pessimism, will concede the defense on ontology, however, they still conceded the warrant evidence on the second off that is not contingent on us winning ontology. It still allows us to go first, but then go to reparations. The TOC owes Iowa City West reparations for the bullshit that happened in prelims. It's conceded that dropping black debaters on evidence challenges without giving us the chance to debate it has rendered me guilty without trial. All of their responses here in links, they just say generalizes the witness. You know it does not. It's unique to this round. We've made it clear how it's unique to this tournament, unique to what happened in prelims. Not even mentioning that the same judge that did that was brought in this round and replaced by Carissa because before this round he said, I will not vote for this black shit. Next. They say surrender is bad. We would argue it's not because they consider this the only way to even begin to pay it back. Then next they say it doesn't suffer instructions upon NC. It doesn't need to. They consider that it begins to pay back the debts. Go to fiction. Their only response was that the act is about the state viewing non-black people's property, and that's bad, but they conceded the warrant evidence. All we need here that tells you that it's basically non-unique. The state does not care about black people. It'll always be viewed as property regardless, but the whole point that we are making is the whole point that we're making about on fiction, the whole point that we're making is that once you affirm the resolution, you're giving black people weight of space trains, which they conceded are uniquely good for the elite press evidence because they're black freedom fighters, which was fully conceded. That's all we need here because it means we're actually solving for racism because we're taking black people to another plane, which means there's no one else to be anti-black to, which was conceded. Go to T. Counter-interpretation, narrative competition. The one he sees a story and retelling it through the other. The space trade is a competitive counter-story. Some more ethical educational model resolution will face price tag. The accumulation for moments of the focus of the sound after gas and interpreting with all the stories with the songs and heard and graphing and recreating the plot. The use of hypotheticals is the staple law itself of the narrative and the statement such a law for interrogation and changes provide a function of framing racialization and sharing to give it a wide judge of the ulterior reality goals to pursue a decision making that most stories is true. And next, that's the topic education, clash and accessibility. The framework and access is Albert Howe 13. Legal scholarship is law, but it is ill-equipped to relate. Most of our legal jargon, non-academics, are read and understand the stories of legal article, story form, community, and whole interest stories, and very clear most ideas are found. You can discover about stories. Explore situations that are really not but raise pragmatic questions about the efficacy of law debates. The message of implications of the Supreme Court for conflicting views. We can discuss doctrines in a way that does not replicate a structure views. Often, we're trying disconnected like mummies and two structure and more engaging what fantasies involved. But then also, we'd argue space traders is a normal app. Don't let them get away with reading T on it. Now, next. Give me my 40 acres on reparations. We would argue that this round now is uniquely key because theory has permanently skewed me out of this round. I am violated and I will always violate your shells. I am guilty and I am now criminalized. Dylan 15. The dead are on trial. The police of so many dead are tripped courtroom. The advantage goes to the living mind. Connect to more to drug use. The defense to devalue more life with only already after like all the population. One was ineligible for personhood. Logic upholds a methodology where good citizens is incorporated against devalue non-normativity that is deserving of social that in this way voluntary are necessary. The proper populations are targeted. Evidence of fact surrendered to irrelevant. When it comes to racial violence and terror, one cannot be blackness because it doesn't support gone conclusion. Cut the card there. Look, do not give them new responses to any of our arguments in second rebuttal. The whole point is that they've already conceded stuff. They did not get another chance to respond to offer that was already conceded. Do not let them get away with that. That is definitionally anti-black. At that point, you know the space traders was conceded. Their only response is not unique. It's just that we're giving black people away, but they conceded that we're giving them their freedom fighters, which is uniquely good. The last part I read, Dylan 15, I cut it after 4 gone conclusion. I got one more. Yeah. Higher doc or just that? Higher doc, you think what? Nothing else is like changed, but I'll send it that out.
Meanwhile, our fairness and black good.
Our fairness and black good. Yes.
Okay, concept. Okay, we'll start that now. Okay, 121. Yeah, it's just 2 parts. Like, I don't think they're really doing it. I'm typing them live, so yeah, this is why. I'll send
What's your order?
The order is going to start on the reparations argument, then T, then case. Everyone ready? I guess we'll take a little bit more. Okay, that's 12. We have 108. Everyone good?
The reparations argument in this game over, but they have conceded that giving them the win delegitimizes the 1AC because it means that they are not winning on the merits of the debate. That was dropped and straight turns the app because they have conceded that it delegitimizes the black movement. Next, they have conceded that surrendering is the wrong alternative. They're calling for surrender. Black people justifies surrender in all spaces which is regressive and hurt blackness. Thus, they have conceded that reparations do matter, but that it is wrong to say that there is internal link between them winning the round and solving the structural conditions of anti-blackness within debate. They say that it is the beginning, but they have not explained or warranted us to how that shapes up or scales up in an actual movement in the first place. They've also conceded that it is bad because it forces them to negate their violence, which is psychological violence on us. It's bad because they've number one job. That means we cannot engage with their arguments. We agree with the premise a lot of their arguments, but forcing us to argue that things like do not vote for black debaters because they were not tried adequately. The TOC was in a possible position to be in. Independently, you can classify this real quick to a card that they read on TV. The reason why theory is different is between the reparation argument is because they were allowed to trial and test. They are allowed to respond to the merits of the T argument. Now, first, progress is possible thereafter. 120 speeches. Contrary new dilemma, it's possible to follow uncertain possible no struggle known. A person who is learning the world for what is really is and working the force is when they embrace that change. And now, T. Yeah. Oh, the storytelling off, not that he's counterintuitive. The SDNA was conceded, they conceded that black people will be brought to space in change. It says there was no capacity for freedom fighters. They did not have any power in space somewhere if we oppress, which replicates their bonds in other worlds and turns ontology on scope. Now, T proper. First, they conceded fairness and clash are good. One first cross for infinite crosses, it allows us to skew the negatives away with murder without clarifying the questions, i.e. turns on the impacts ruling, text or functional premise. They have conceded that it is the best way of testing their model and response to their arguments about no warrants in second rebuttal. Now, fairness block. It is the highest error than accident because of testing. They have dropped that it is a meta constraint to the app. They have conceded that fairness and clash are good, which means we get new answers. Anything else justifies a destruction of testing in an endless framework trace. It outweighs individual ballots cannot change the structure. They signal whether a roughly thought the app was a good idea. Only fairness is possible to the ballot because remedies are chance of victory. Arguments about what the ballot can do must be framed with what the ballot can control. Proximity always overdetermines possibility. They have conceded it's a combination. They follow time constraints, strategic choices, and presume you'll evaluate their arguments, saying fairness is fine for speech times, but not testing is arbitrary and lies a principal basis within utility. In a terms case, combination forces teams think about the complexity of their structures. Only testing exposes false positives and negatives. They've also dropped that you cannot classify any of their case arguments or relatedly cards because they do not adjust the merits of their argument, and also because it is a matter constraint that we cannot test about whether or not their cross apps are to begin with because they have heard clash. Now, while I answered their argument specifically, first they say that the space app is topical. No, they concede number one that it requires the legislative action that we fiat the U.S. government does something. They do not. Their card is contingent on the U.S. federal government saying yes. The only thing they fiat is the space force. And secondly, they have conceded it requires them to spend money. No, they have conceded the plan does not spend money, which is a sufficient violation. Now, the counteranswer. First, Bell story is problematic, so they glorify an academic artist. That is racist. Secondly, the argument comes largely power. Even if they win their office, the validity of an impact is determined by evaluating those impacts fairly. Even if you conclude that their office outweighs, you've only assessed that debate through the prism of monopolizing ballot access. This was dropped. Now, the lethal disease argument describing racism as a disease obsoletes culpability, allows people to blame the disease on some external force. It gives white politics ground to say those who are anti-black are not culpable, which is what has empirically happened. Things like mass shootings against black people were used as this guy has mental issues, which allows him to be unculpable for the argument. It is distinctly unethical to drop us, conceding competition, force the bears trying to change in a shame which destroys any progress. Anything you want me to do specifically from there?
make it clear that they conceded that we get answers?
Oh, yes, drop answers in the next speech. Now, Clash. Clash turns case every impact. Firstly, violence, police institutions, indigenous litigation, and climate change are delicate situations that require the ability to think through interlinked details. Definitely, debate is not good enough for one particular thing, but is a problem-solving tool that can be applied to every issue you will face for the rest of your life, which solves their offense. They've indicted our research, but not us, our debate. As a whole, debating over a particular stasis point builds these skills that critical to create positive change within every single structure that'll end up throughout our entire lives, which vastly outweighs their offense.
Largely all planks on ontology were dropped.
Yeah, all planks on ontology were dropped. The warrant evidence are also answered to by Sanchez. It directly responds to their warrants, but the easiest place is definitely just to go into.
Now, first question.
Yeah.
Should racists lose?
What?
Should racists lose?
Yeah.
Yes. Right? So if we can win, hypothetically, that you are racist in this round, you lose.
What if we prove that you're racist too? Then who does it?
All right, let's go yes or no. If you can prove that we're racist, then we can have that debate in a second.
No, I'm asking you right now.
If you can win that we were racist, yes, we lose.
Yes,
Yes,
racists should lose, but should there be meta constraints on the debate round?
Yes. Do you not agree that racism is probably a more important question?
Would we be here debating and spreading, like, say, discourse or clashing about racism, just spill out to the real world?
What?
If the debate had no, like, rules?
Sorry, repeat that question.
Are there meta constraints on the debate space
Yes.
that you think are good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Can I have a question?
Yeah.
Let's talk about meta constraints.
Okay.
What do you think is a more egregious violation? If someone breaks meta constraints or if they're racist?
We would argue that determining whether or not someone is racist requires meta constraints, so meta constraints is not priority to
Yeah.
your claims that any debater in this round was racist.
Yeah, there's due process in, say, the debate space.
There's
We would
due
not
process.
we would not
Let's
just
clarify,
flip it.
there's due
Would
process,
Would you be
correct.
comfortable flipping a coin to decide the round?
Absolutely fucking not. You're way behind, you just don't know it yet. Let's talk really quickly.
Wait, but doesn't that mean that fairness is kind of important?
What? How does that at all mean fairness important?
Because if we flip a coin to decide the round, that would be distinctly unfair to both sides' research and both sides' argumentation.
Well, you can argue it's fair because both sides get an equal chance. There's so many different warrants.
So would you
That's
flip
the
a
point.
coin? So then would you flip a coin? Or would you have a
I'm
judge?
actually having a really unlucky day. I don't want to flip a coin.
Would you have a judge? Would you have a judge just vote for one of the teams?
You've taken 10
Because of their
questions. I'm
preference?
gonna take a question. Let's talk about narrative competition. Why is it bad?
Narrative competition.
Yes.
Which argument is this one?
It's the counter tripartite. You want to see the story or read the
That's a claim that your author is racist.
The price evidence?
I'm not the author, but the argument is that the plan is bad.
Okay, well, one sec. The plan and narrative competition are two different things. Narrative competition is just dependent on the plan. I'm asking you
that the act of narrating bad things are bad. That's
okay, but narrating in and of itself is not bad. It's just that our narration is bad.
No, it is that the narration of the plan is bad.
Of this plan, but narration in general is it bad?
Depends, but either way, I would say that T is still a meta constraint.
Okay, but your response did not respond to the fact that narration can be good.
Narration can be good, but in this instance, it is not.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. But narration can be good. You said
Within
yes.
meta
You got it.
constraints. There's 12 seconds. I don't have anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We'll start.
Oliver's context.
I was like, talk case.
What was that?
gonna be the disease IBI, and then we're gonna go to space traders, then we're gonna go to T, and yeah.
Wait, so disease IBI, traders, and T.
Yeah.
So no reparations?
No.
Okay.
Wait, actually, we might say something on reparations.
So that'll go last.
Everyone good? Alright, everyone good?
Yep.
Anti-blackness is a lethal infectious disease that is transmitted through communication and pedagogy. They've conceded that they cannot outcheck racism. The Dylan evidence is really good here that we conceded and cross applies to everything they've said. Bashir cannot defend himself in this round, and T has proven that we're losing to T because it was already predetermined that we will lose to T by the system. They've conceded that guilt is a foregone conclusion when it comes to blackness and is divorced from the ontology debate. It's about how black voices are predetermined as criminal. They've also conceded that they do not cite or read black scholars, which are symptoms for the Thomas evidence, which is enough for the risk of racism. Realize that the Dylan evidence is really clean here, but then they say that calling anti-blackness is a disease allows people to blame diseases and use it as a disguise. That's ridiculous. We're holding you accountable for your actions in this round, and calling it good and calling it a disease is fine because you conceded fiction is good and narratives can't be good. But where you will be signing your ballot is going to be on space shares argument, which went completely conceded. Extend the counterblame. They have no intention of putting an end to anti-blackness. The USFG is a modern version of the slave ship. Thus, the space shares should give the U.S. the nuclear energy if and only if the United States surrenders all African Americans in the United States as part of the Jake Solves the act, and the U.S. says yes. Giving up people to the space shares solves multiple extinction threats by taking away from the form of implicit violence that allows. And then remember that there was no new responses from second rebuttal allows them to get up and just make new responses to arguments after re-implicate them on the floor, which was they conceded is bad coming out of Bashir's rebuttal. But then they have a couple of responses, but they fall short. First, they say that progress is possible. We agree progress is possible, but not within this system, which is why we need to send black people and send them to the aliens so they can live a better life. But second, they say we conceded that there's no power from freedom fighters. And remember that the lead price evidence is really clean here. It tells you that the plan is key and that they are freedom fighters. Realize that you have to prefer the evidence over their analysis. Then go to T. I'll cross out Dylan at the top of summary that's really clean here, but then extend narrative competition that the 1AC is the story and our retelling of it is through the lens of lens of space traders is a competitive counter story, which is a good model of debate because increasing fiction in legal scholarship increases accessibility, and their framework cannot access the increasing accessibility to black people specifically. It doesn't matter if they're solving for them and able to clash if we can't. Realize that the accessibility warrants were completely conceded, which is our model of debate is better for everything that they are advocating for. All the fairness, all the clash is going to be solved. That was our evidence that we're completely conceded. But we'll argue the fact that the space traders are freedom fighters, which means that our scholarship is good, even if we lose that. They are good for black people. The fact that this was a discussion we've had in this round is uniquely good under our framework. The discussion that we are having in this round is good for clash and fairness and everything they're going for, which turns it in. We're completely conceded. But then they say we heard clash. Our argument is literally topical. There's no reason as why we heard clash, but realize we also turn it for the evidence that says that their scholarship can't access the arguments that we're going for, but then on reparations. Look, they've conceded that the TOC has fucked us over and we should be able to argue for reparations and literally nothing else matters. All the responses to this argument is literally a link in why you are citing your ballot for us and putting them in uncomfortable places. It's enough to outweigh on literally anything else they're going for.
Okay. No. 5 seconds. ordered reparations, ontology, the diseases IVI, T. Reparations, ontology, the disease IVI, and then T.
No
Oh.
plan in there?
Huh?
No plan in there?
Sorry?
Space readers?
That'll go right after the disease IVI. Okay. For what? The disease IVI. So reparations, ontology, disease, space traders, and then T.
First things first, no new responses. They've conceded that we do get new responses because it would deck fairness and clash and incentivizes 4 minutes of framework tricks, which would deck all of that was been conceded since the second speech. It means that everything about Warren and all of the evidence from Jason's last speech should be evaluated. The reparations fully conceded. It was overtime. All of them are links. They've conceded that it is anti-black because it centralizes models of black debate and destroys them on their merits. It decentralizes different groups, which is the reason why they're racist and recidified the racism within the debate space. It was literally untouched, and it turns all the ontology because it proves that it's like cruel optimism on the ontology argument. They've conceded the fullness of the Sanchez evidence. I'll answer ontology in the real world. They've conceded that real world progress is possible. For example, they've illustrated historical factors and coalitions that have existed in the real world, which I will tie back to the T argument later. The second argument within the debate space, ontology and progress is possible as well. They've conceded that both clash and fairness are air priorities, and they rely on testing claims and also valid proximity because you do not know about storytelling and how that affects, but it is the only thing. They've also conceded on T that there will be no cross applications. Check your flow. This was an argument since the first speech. There will be no cross applications. Ontology is a reason to frame out T. They've conceded solidly that they are not winning this claim, that all of our arguments are our priority on the disease IVI. They fully conceded that describing racism as a disease involves culpability. The only thing they said, they've literally said nothing on this. They said holding people accountable for their actions in round is good if it justifies a model that shames people trying to change and causes high school debaters to find microaggressions in people whose frontal cortexes are literally still evolving. They've conceded in the real world that it gives white apologists ground to say that those who are anti-black are not culpable because it is simply a disease that everyone is affected by. It is the way they frame the language that recidifies their ontology. It is another reason why they are racist. To push that we are racist has no warrant, and they've conceded 2 reasons why they violate themselves. The space traders argument conceded that there are no freedom fighters. They cannot just go for a different piece of evidence when their evidence explicitly says black people will be in chains. There will be no one to solve the movement, which means that the space traders argument starts at 0, and it also means that it recidifies ontology to other worlds, which now is their argument on scope. It is just another conceded argument, just the way they frame it, and also it destroys storytelling. T, the AF must be certain justifies their plan being a counterplan. When you vote neg, they've conceded that the AF certainty in terms of the way they express the space traders argument means that you vote neg. The T interpret they literally called it a counterplan while reading it on the affirmative. Yeah. Okay, T. Our interpretation versus their counter-interpretation is not whether storytelling as a method is bad, but that clash as a model is far better. Largely all of the interpretation was about accessibility outweighing, but they just assert that it will be solved. They conceded that it devolves to 0 contestations. Yes, we have conceded that storytelling is a model, but clash is a far better model because it allows us to test 3rd and 4th layer claims, and debate should resemble policy making in the real world because they've conceded again that ontology in the real world is malleable. So clash within debate is key. They've also conceded all the offense. And they've conceded that fairness is good as a meta to train on testing. If you have unfair evaluation because the arguments are skewed out of the round and the interpretation, it means that they should lose dropping the cases functioning the same as dropping debaters. If they have no testing, again, there's no possible in-round clashing with the arguments either, which means that you cannot possibly believe the inevitable push that our representations were bad. Yeah, they're losing ontology, 2 warrants why they're racist. Just basically the speech had no warrants.
Do y'all want to skip Rand? Do you want to do it?
We can skip Rand. Just a minute.
Okay, do y'all want to do prep?
No, it's fine.
Alright. It's going to be starting on the Antiblackness disease IVI stuff, wherever you float that. And then reparations, T, counterplan.
So disease, reparations, T, counterplan.
Disease, reparations, T, counterplan. Or plan. Everyone good?
It is a 304 streak on T, and there's nothing we can fucking do. That is our whole point. Dylan was conceded and conceded that the T shell in this red has skewed me out because it's a black body. I am found guilty without
out trial was already predetermined that the moment we walk into this route, we're going to lose on T. There's nothing we can do. They've conceded that black bodies are found criminal before they can do anything. They themselves tell you no new responses will concede that. At that point, remember, the argument we're making, this is divorced from the ontology claim. It is about how black people are portrayed through the round. They've conceded that fully. We cannot prove that we're innocent because guilt is a foregone conclusion. They've conceded that evidence and facts are rendered irrelevant when it comes to racialized violence and terror. Then next. You break the clash here. Even if they win that reparations for anti-black, that does not hurt them specifically, but their anti-black skews me specifically out of the round. Screw standards and conceded that even if clash is good, it doesn't matter if they English clash for themselves, if they skew my clash. Then next, you can extend anti-blackness as the lethal infectious disease that is transmitted through communication and pedagogy. And you have an ethical responsibility to reject racism. They've conceded that you cannot out-tech racism. At that point, that's all we need there. They've conceded the specific links that we've got for in summary. Their failure to cite black authors, their failure to read black arguments are all proof of our argument. They were all conceded. All they say is that all they say here is that us calling it a disease evades culpability. But no, you have now backlined that calling it a disease is fine because you've conceded fiction and narratives can be good, which is all we need here. On topicality, we don't need to win the counter play. They conceded the pricing, however, our method increases accessibility to black people. Your method doesn't. That's a reason as to why our method goes first. But then, even if it's not a reason as to why our method goes first, it's at least a reason why our method is sufficient enough in this round. They say no crossouts. Check your flow. The Dylan evidence was read on T. There's a reason why they should lose on T. It is not a crossout. We're not going to go for space traders. Look, this round is super simple. They themselves have conceded that racists should lose. We've isolated a few reasons why they're racist. They have not responded to the specific evidence in Thomas and Buchholz that tells you that they have failed to read black arguments for black scholars. There was no clash there. Just drop them there.
Okay, 5 seconds.
The order is going to start on, I guess, the whole racist picture, but it'll be kind of confusing. I'll signpost in that area, and then it'll probably just yeah. All right, everyone good?
Both sides have agreed that anyone who is racist should lose the debate. They have conceded that if they are racist too, and that we can prove that that is sufficient to down them. There are multiple links that were conceded in first final focus. First, they have dropped that the reparations argument is a link. They have dropped that the way that they ask for reparations homogenizes all black debate, and then it also delegitimizes the 1AC because it means that debaters are not debating on the merit, which delegitimizes anti-blackness. The only response is that anti-blackness does not hurt us. It is irrelevant whether or not it hurts us, because our argument is that it hurts all black debate as a it hurts black debate as a whole. The second argument, even if you the second argument, the space traders argument, explicitly conceded that they rectified ontological violence to other galactic systems. No freedom fighters was conceded. They have conceded in Ultra Ignite that their Ultra agents rectify slavery in our ways because cruel optimism was conceded. Even if they have not gone for the argument in first final focus, they have still defended their reps, and they have conceded that is enough to vote for us. Second, the disease argument conceded that it is white apologists and pushes justifications into the real world through rhetoric that those who are racist just have a disease. They have conceded that representation come first, and wait, the only response that they say that it's fine because you are holding these people accountable, but they have conceded that these do not hold people accountable because instead they are saying that it is the fault of the disease. That is not something they can control, which is what allows them to skirt out of controlling them in the first place. Next, we're going to go views for the Dylan push. They have conceded that essentialization takes this argument out. The large push is moved because their model destroys black debate. That is not K debate. Concede that clash is still an a priori debate is effective at producing real world policymakers who solve back for their ontological claims on scope. T?
Just read this.
Okay, conceded coalition solve, for example, black debate and multiple debate. Now, T, they have conceded that the app is not topical, or that the app is not topical. They have conceded that clash should come first because it is a litmus test to determining whether or not the app is true in the first place. You should reject all the claims that they have made against us because they have conceded that in order for you to bind them in the first place, it relies on you determining whether or not the claims that the app is made are true in the first place. And they have conceded that what clash is better than storytelling. We will debate the counter right now with remedies, rule and ontology per sanctions. They have conceded that argument is the best model, even within narratives, that being topical is the best way to have meta constraints. Also, the argument about Strake winning on its Rio is not framed as offense. There's no reason why, despite them, also they got to test the T shell because they got to debate it.